There once lived a young woman named Nadia, whose life was both inspiring and unique. After the sudden demise of her beloved parents, she found herself thrust into the demanding role of CEO of their business empire. Determined to honor their legacy, Nadia poured her heart and soul into the company. Over the years, her hard work paid off, and the business expanded beyond her country's borders, becoming a renowned international conglomerate. Her success earned her widespread recognition, but what truly set her apart was her unmatched humility and calm demeanor. Despite her immense achievements, Nadia's life wasn't all about boardrooms and deals. From the age of 15, she had one constant companion who brought joy and stability to her world: her loyal dog, Bolos. For her 15th birthday, Nadia had begged her parents for a puppy, and they had lovingly fulfilled her wish. Bolos quickly became much more than a pet. He was her confidant, protector, and best friend, offering unconditional love and loyalty. Bolos had grown to be a magnificent dog, not just in size, but in his role in Nadia's life. He was her family, her security guard, and her greatest companion. They had a bond so strong it was almost like they spoke the same language. Nadia would give instructions, and Bolos would obey with intelligence and enthusiasm that amazed anyone who saw them together. As Nadia juggled the weight of running a vast company, she always made time for Bolos. No matter how packed her schedule was, she ensured they spent quality time together. On weekends, they would stroll through the neighborhood streets, Bolos proudly walking beside her like a royal guardian. Sometimes, they'd visit beautiful parks, where Nadia could momentarily escape the pressures of her corporate world, throwing a ball for Bolos and laughing as he raced to fetch it. Their bond was unbreakable, and their moments together were pure joy. People in her community admired not just Nadia's business acumen, but also her down-to-earth nature. She might be a global business icon, but to Bolos, she was just Nadia, his best friend. Together, they were an inseparable duo, proving that sometimes the best family isn't the one you're born into, but the one you find along the way. Nadia's 26th birthday was a dazzling event, the kind of celebration that left everyone talking for weeks. Friends, extended family, and influential figures from around the world filled the grand venue. Representatives from international companies attended to honor Nadia, the young and accomplished CEO who had captured their admiration with her brilliance and humility. The air was charged with excitement, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. As the evening progressed, Nadia was the picture of grace, moving through the crowd, receiving heartfelt wishes, and opening an array of thoughtful gifts. But just as the party was winding down, a tall, strikingly handsome young man entered the hall. His late arrival caught everyone's attention, but it was his charming smile and confident demeanor that left a lasting impression. Nadia couldn't help but notice him. He seemed different, almost mysterious. When it was finally his turn to present his gift, he did so with a warm smile, handing it to her personally. There was something special about the way he lingered for a moment, as though the gift carried more meaning than he let on. Nadia accepted it with a polite nod, but her heart skipped a beat. By the time Nadia got home, she was utterly exhausted. The party had been a whirlwind, and all she wanted to do was collapse into bed. Yet, as she settled down, her thoughts kept drifting back to the charming stranger. Who was he? Why did he come so late? And why did he insist on giving me his gift personally? She wondered aloud. Unable to resist her curiosity any longer, she reached for the neatly wrapped box. With careful hands, she opened it, and her eyes widened in delight. Inside were the most beautiful roses she had ever seen, their fragrance filling the room. Nestled among the flowers was a small envelope. She unfolded the note, her heart racing. Happy birthday, Nadia. Beauty and brilliance deserve to be celebrated. D. Nadia's lips parted in surprise. She whispered to herself, "Wow, this is beautiful." For a moment, she stared at the note, lost in thought, her heart fluttering in a way she hadn't experienced before. Just then, her phone buzzed. The screen displayed an unknown number. Confused but curious, she answered. "Hello, this is Nadia," she said cautiously. A deep, smooth voice responded. "Good evening, Nadia. I hope I'm not disturbing you. It's Dave, the one who gave you the last gift at your party." Nadia's breath hitched. It was him, the mysterious stranger from the party. "My name is Dave," the smooth voice said over the phone. "I hope you love the gift." Nadia smiled, holding the phone tighter. "Oh, thank you so much for the thoughtful gift. It was truly special, and I really appreciate it." That simple exchange marked the beginning of what seemed like a perfect relationship. Dave quickly became a central part of Nadia's life. He was attentive, charming, and showered her with love and gifts. From expensive jewelry to surprise weekend getaways, he spared no effort to prove that he was the right man for her. But it wasn't just the gifts. Dave made himself present in Nadia's daily life. They often had lunch together at upscale restaurants and jogged side by side at one of the city's best gyms on weekends. Their time together was filled with laughter and shared dreams, and Nadia felt like she was finally experiencing the kind of love she had always hoped for. One sunny afternoon, Nadia decided it was time for Dave to meet the one constant in her life, her beloved dog, Bolos. She brought Dave home, excited to introduce him to her loyal companion. However, as soon as Bolos laid eyes on Dave, his reaction was anything but welcoming. The usually calm and obedient dog began barking uncontrollably, his deep, sharp barks echoing through the house. Nadia froze in shock. She had never seen Bolos act this way before. He wasn't just barking, he seemed agitated, his stance protective and wary, as if he sensed something she couldn't. "Bolos, stop it," Nadia scolded, her voice firm. But the dog refused to calm down, his barking only growing louder. Embarrassed and frustrated, Nadia turned to Dave, whose face showed a mix of surprise and unease. "I'm so sorry about this," she said, her cheeks burning with humiliation. Dave gave her a hesitant smile and said, "It's okay, but how do you cope with a dog like this? It seems pretty untrained, and that can be dangerous for you." Nadia's heart sank. She had always been proud of Bolos's intelligence and loyalty, but now, in front of Dave, he was acting completely out of character. She felt torn between defending her beloved dog and appeasing Dave. "Bolos, that's enough," she snapped, grabbing his leash. She dragged him to a corner of the yard and, for the first time in years, chained him there. Bolos looked at her with wide, confused eyes, his body trembling slightly. It was as if he was asking, "Why are you doing this? Don't you trust me?" Nadia's chest tightened, but she forced herself to turn away. She didn't want Dave to think she was incapable of handling her dog. As they walked back into the house, Dave placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing. It's just a dog, after all." But as Dave spoke, something about Bolos's reaction lingered in Nadia's mind. As soon as Dave left, Nadia felt a wave of guilt wash over her. She couldn't stop thinking about Bolos's distressed expression when she chained him. Without hesitation, she hurried outside to where Bolos sat quietly, still chained, his ears drooping and his eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and confusion. "Bolos," she whispered softly as she knelt beside him, her hands trembling. She quickly unhooked the chain, and Bolos stretched, giving her a cautious look. It was as though he was trying to decide whether to forgive her or remain disappointed. "Come on," Nadia said gently, patting his head. "Let's go inside." They walked side by side into the living room, the silence between them almost deafening. Bolos lay down near his favorite spot by the couch, his head resting on his paws, while Nadia sat on the edge of the couch, fidgeting with her fingers. She couldn't shake the heaviness in the air. It was the first time Bolos had ever seemed distant from her. After what felt like an eternity, Nadia broke the silence. "Bolos," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I am so sorry for what I did earlier. I shouldn't have chained you. I know I hurt you, and I hate myself for it." Bolos tilted his head slightly, his intelligent eyes meeting hers. But she continued as she slowly rose, her tone soft but firm. "You really surprised me today. Why were you barking at Dave like that? He's not a stranger, Bolos, he's family now. I need you to understand that and accept him." Her words hung in the air as Bolos remained still, his gaze unwavering. Nadia sighed deeply, running her fingers through her hair. "You've always been my protector, my best friend. I trust you with my life, but you have to trust me too. Dave is someone I care about deeply, and I need you to see that." Bolos shifted slightly, his ears perking up at her words. Slowly, he got up and moved closer to Nadia, resting his head on her lap. It was his way of showing he forgave her, even if he didn't entirely agree with her. Nadia smiled faintly and stroked his fur, her heart feeling a little lighter. "Thank you, Bolos," she whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." But as she sat there, the weight of Bolos's earlier reaction lingered in her mind. It wasn't like him to act out without reason. What had he seen, or sensed, that she hadn't? A few weeks later, Nadia and Dave sat in a luxurious office, the late afternoon sun streaming through the large windows. Dave leaned back in his chair, his tone steady and confident. "Nadia, before we get married, there are a few things we need to put in place. I believe in building a solid foundation, and one way to do that is to combine our businesses. Marriage is all about sharing a life, and that includes everything: career, finances, and decisions. We should plan to bring each other fully into our lives." Nadia nodded thoughtfully, her eyes fixed on him. "I've been thinking about that too, actually," she said. "My parents were the perfect example of a successful partnership. They built their empire together. Everything was shared. Their lives were so intertwined, and I've always wanted to follow in their footsteps." Dave smiled, encouraged by her response. "Exactly. A strong romantic relationship needs a strong foundation, and sharing every aspect of our lives is the first step to achieving that. We should start by discussing the documentation and putting everything in writing." Nadia tilted her head, intrigued. "That makes sense. Just let me know how you'd like to proceed, and I'll bring my lawyer into the conversation to make sure everything is handled properly." Dave's expression lit up as he leaned forward. "Perfect. Once we finalize everything, I'll need a proper place in the company to understand how it's run. I want to be involved, not just as your husband, but as your partner in every sense of the word." Nadia gave him an approving smile. "I appreciate that, Dave. It's good to know you're thinking about our future so seriously. Just say when, and we'll get started." As the conversation flowed, Nadia suddenly remembered something. "By the way," she asked, "when are you heading back to the States? You've been here longer than I expected." Dave chuckled, his smile warm and reassuring. "Not anytime soon. My main reason for coming back was to settle down and start building a family. My business is already under control. I monitor everything online. Being here, with you, is where my focus is now." Nadia felt her cheeks flush slightly at his words, her heart warming at his dedication. His plans seemed genuine, and his willingness to invest in their future together touched her deeply, and she was grateful for finally having such a man in her life. Bolos, ever vigilant and loyal, stood patiently by Nadia's bedroom door, his usual morning routine. Every day, he waited for her to step out, ready to accompany her as she prepared for work. But today was different. The house was unusually quiet, and Nadia's door remained closed for far longer than usual. Bolos tilted his head, his sharp instincts telling him something wasn't right. He let out a few low whines, hoping Nadia would hear him and open the door. When there was no response, his concern grew. He started pacing back and forth, his ears perked up and his tail stiff with tension. Then he began making louder noises, barking and whining, to get someone's attention. When that didn't work, Bollos made a decision. He dashed outside to the gatehouse, where the gateman was seated, barking loudly and persistently. Bollos tugged at the man's trouser leg, trying to pull him toward the house. The gateman, who had grown accustomed to Bollos's intelligent way of communicating, immediately knew something was wrong. "What is it, Bollos?" he asked, standing up and following the dog inside. Bollos led him straight to Nadia's bedroom door and began barking again, louder this time, standing firm like a soldier on guard. The gateman knocked gently on the door. "Madam Nadia, are you okay?" he called out. When there was no response, his concern deepened. Slowly, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. There on the bed lay Nadia, looking pale and visibly weak. Her breathing was shallow, and her movement sluggish. She raised a hand slightly, gesturing toward the bedside table. "Water," she whispered faintly. Without hesitation, the gateman turned and sprinted out of the room. Bollos was right behind him, as though urging him to move faster. Moments later, the gateman returned with a glass of water, and Bollos ran alongside him with urgency in every step. Nadia managed to sit up with effort, taking small sips of the water as Bollos sat beside her, watching her every move. The gateman hurried to fetch a chilled bottle of juice, and after a few minutes, Nadia began to regain her strength. Her color slowly returned, and her breathing steady. She looked up at the gateman with a weak but grateful smile. "Thank you so much for coming in time," she said softly. The gateman shook his head modestly and pointed to Bollos. "It's not me you should thank, madam. It's Bollos. He made all the moves to get my attention." Nadia turned to Bollos, who was still sitting faithfully beside her, his eyes filled with concern. She reached out to rub his head, her voice filled with emotion. "Oh, Bollos, what would I do without you?" The loyal dog wagged his tail, leaning into her touch. It was a moment of deep connection, a reminder of just how much Bollos meant to her, not just as a pet, but as her protector, her family, and her constant source of comfort. After a while, Nadia's phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and saw Dave's name flashing. Picking up the call, she answered with a tired voice. "Hello, Dave. I'm so sorry I didn't call earlier. I woke up feeling really tired and unwell this morning." On the other end, Dave's tone carried a mix of concern and impatience. "Oh, sorry to hear that," he said, though his voice lacked its usual warmth. "I'm already at your office with those papers you need to sign. Nadia, this is exactly why we need to move quickly with this. Having me officially involved will help lighten the load for you." Nadia leaned back on her bed, rubbing her temple. "I understand, Dave, You're right. But my lawyer advised me not to sign certain documents until we're married. Let me see the papers first, and I'll decide which ones can wait. Dave sighed audibly, the pause on the line stretching into silence. Sensing his hesitation, Nadia spoke again, her tone softer but firm. I'm not feeling well enough to leave the house today. Can you bring the documents here instead? There was another pause, and Nadia felt the weight of unspoken thoughts between them. Breaking the silence, she continued carefully. I know what you're thinking, Dave. You don't like bolos, do you? Dave's hesitation was evident. It's not that. Nadia cut him off gently, smiling faintly despite her fatigue. It's okay, Dave. I've noticed. Look, Bolos is just very protective of me. He doesn't mean any harm, and I've already spoken to him about you. He's just used to being my only family, but trust me, he doesn't have an issue with you. Dave let out a small laugh, though it sounded forced. That dog of yours is something else, he said with a mix of humor and caution. I'll come over, but only if you promise I won't have to deal with another scene like the last time. Nadia chuckled softly, her voice lightening the tension. I promise. Bolos and I have had a good talk, and he'll be on his best behavior. Besides, he knows you're important to me. Dave's tone brightened. All right then. I'll be there soon. Just make sure Bolos knows I come in peace. As the call ended, Nadia sighed deeply and turned to Bolos, who had been lying by her side, his ears twitching as if he'd been listening to the conversation. She reached out to pat his head, her voice tender. Well, Bolos, it seems we both have work to do, me convincing Dave to be patient, and you convincing him that you're not the enemy. Bolos wagged his tail slightly, his intelligent eyes meeting hers. When Dave arrived at Nadia's house, she was already relaxing on the plush couch in the living room, looking better, but still visibly tired. Bolos, ever vigilant, sat quietly at a corner beside her, his eyes fixed on Dave as he entered. Dave's face wore a mask of concern as he sat beside Nadia. Do you think you need to go to the hospital? He asked gently. Nadia shook her head and offered a small smile. No, my doctor was here earlier. He gave me some medication and said I just need to rest. I don't like hospital smells, so I prefer to recover at home. Dave smiled and nodded. Exactly what I've been saying. You push yourself too hard. I'm going to make sure you rest properly from now on. They talked for a while, and Dave cracked a few jokes to lighten the mood. Nadia laughed heartily, her spirits visibly lifting as they chatted. After a while, she leaned forward slightly and said, Dave, can you hand me those documents? I'd like to go through them now. Dave shook his head playfully, pretending to scold her. Not yet, my love. Let me get you your favorite juice first to help you relax. We can deal with the papers afterward. Nadia smiled, touched by his attentiveness. Thank you so much, darling. I really appreciate your love and care. Dave rose from the couch and headed to the kitchen. Bollos watched him intently, his ears perked up, his body language signaling unease. As soon as Dave disappeared into the kitchen, Bollos waited a few moments before quietly following him, positioning himself at a distance where he could observe Dave's every move. Dave, unaware of the dog's watchful eyes, was busy preparing a tray with 2 glasses of juice. However, he wasn't just making a refreshing drink, he slipped a powdery substance into one of the glasses, stirring it carefully to ensure it dissolved completely. Once satisfied, he placed both glasses on the tray and returned to the living room. As Dave set the tray on the table, he handed one glass to Nadia. "Here you go, my love. This will help calm your nerves," he said with a warm smile. Nadia reached out to take the glass, but just as her fingers brushed the rim, Bollos began barking loudly, his voice sharp and insistent. Dave froze and turned to glare at the dog. "Why didn't you chain this dog before I got here?" he said, his frustration barely hidden. Nadia frowned, narrowing her eyes at Bollos. "Bollos, quiet down," she said firmly, trying to ignore his noise. She stretched her hand again to take the glass, but Bollos didn't stop. This time, he began jumping frantically, barking even louder. Dave, now visibly flustered, placed the glass back on the tray. "This dog is impossible," he muttered under his breath. Nadia sighed, exasperated. "Bollos, I'll deal with you later," she said, picking up the glass despite the dog's protests.
The story continues. Watch out for part 2. Hello, besties. Do you really want to know what happened to Nadia, who is talking under the mask? And what is Dave up to? This and more you get to know. Make sure you subscribe to this channel because the twists in this story will leave you amazed. Check the description below for links to more exciting stories on this channel.
Thank you so much for watching. God bless you all. I love you.